Welcome back. As we mentioned, for the second time in as many weeks, voters are heading to the polls in a Republican gubernatorial primary that has turned into a proxy war between the establishment and Trump wings of the party. We are joined now by former Wisconsin Republican Governor Scott Walker, who is backing former Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Kleefisch in the Republican primary, of course, and she is taking on someone who's backed by former President Trump. Governor, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Kristen, good to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
We are going to get to the races in just a moment. But first, of course, I do have to get your reaction to this extraordinary breaking news, the FBI executing a search warrant of former Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. What do you make of it?
Well, it's outrageous. This idea that the FBI doesn't look into Hillary Clinton, they don't look into Hunter Biden, and yet they're going into the home of a president. This is unprecedented weaponizing.
Well, the FBI did look into Hillary Clinton. The FBI did look into Hillary Clinton, Governor.
What's that?
But, Governor, the FBI did look into Hillary Clinton.
Well, they didn't do the kind of things you're seeing here, even when you look at our emails and everything else involved, but particularly Hunter Biden, where even now some of the biggest critics of that being exposed right before the 2020 election are now highlighting that we should be doing more to look into Hunter Biden. And yet they've just weaponized this in a way that Rebecca Kleefisch and I actually personally know about. They tried to do a John Doe investigation twice here in Wisconsin, very similar to what they're trying to do here, and it was ultimately shut down. But that was being politicizing local prosecutors like they're doing at the federal level.
Well, and to be fair, that investigation has not finished. We don't know where it's going to go. And so we still need to let that play out, I think, before there's a judgment about it. I guess, let me play you some sound from one of your colleagues, your Republican colleague, Senator Marco Rubio, and I want to get your reaction on the other side. And it kind of fits into the broader argument that you're making. So let's play the sound. I'll get your reaction.
The truth is, this raid wasn't about documents. This raid was about trying to disqualify a likely future election opponent, about trying to intimidate Republicans who oppose the left, and about creating a distraction from Biden's failures and the radicalism of the Democratic Party that he leads. It was no coincidence they did this just 2 days before the new inflation numbers come out this week, because they want the media talking about this raid.
Is there a danger in making these accusations, trying to politicize the actions of the DOJ before having all of the information? DOJ is an independent agency.
Well, there certainly hasn't been a lot of transparency. And for years we said, oh, agencies like the FBI, Department of Justice, and the IRS couldn't do things like this. And wow, during the Obama administration, we actually found, yes, they were targeting conservative organizations, and there was documented evidence.
But the FBI, but Governor, the FBI is controlled by Chris Wray, who was appointed by former President Trump.
And
are you saying he's not leading an independent agency?
It's all part of a deep state that we've seen the kind of sentiment that we've seen. It's why, my goodness, why people objected to putting more IRS agents out there. These folks that are part of a deep state in Washington, very much like we dealt with.
Chris Wray, who was appointed by Trump, Governor, was part of the deep state. He was appointed.
I'm talking about people within the organization, just like I dealt with when we had 2 different John Doe investigations that were ultimately thrown out by a federal judge. They went through that whole process, did the sort of cut raids to supporters of ours, did the sort of things that we're seeing played out, and ultimately was thrown out, even to the point of, even after a federal judge ordered all the documents returned, accidentally leaked to the press on a Friday afternoon, 150,000 some emails of mine, none of which were very interesting, but nonetheless, I think when people see this over and over again, they say this is not just a coincidence, this is part of a pattern. People are deeply entrenched in whether it's the federal, state, or local government.
Let's stick to the search of Mar-a-Lago and this breaking news. I mean, are you not undercutting the public's faith in the Department of Justice, an independent agency, by suggesting that it's a part of the DOJ without any evidence? You haven't brought forth any evidence to actually prove that this was politically motivated, or that any of these people are involved in a so-called deep state.
We suggest that there should be absolute transparency about this process. But when you have a pattern and you see it over and over again in the past, it certainly raises a red flag when something like this happens right now. We've seen it time and time and time and time again. And at some point, the American people start to say, hey, there's a pattern here. And it's disgusting because Justice, Department of Justice, the FBI, even the Internal Revenue Agency should be above this all. Equal justice under the law. But
Governor, is there not a danger in making those accusations without anything to back them up? Our Ben Collins, Ryan Riley have been reporting that some of the former president's supporters have been going online, even calling for a so-called civil war. I mean, do you worry that you're feeding into some of that rhetoric and fire?
Well, one, we shouldn't be talking about a civil war in terms of violence, but we shouldn't at the same time somehow think that people can't speak out on this. When we heard about Russian collusion, and then you see this all the way going back to the Clinton campaign, when you see evidence coming out over and over again over the last 4 or 5 years, again, I feel strongly about this because not only did Donald Trump deal with it, I dealt the same sort of thing here in Wisconsin. It's part of the reason why I'm backing Rebecca Clayfish for governor, because she's been tested having to go through this nonsense as well. We don't back down, nor do we expect the president of the United States, Donald Trump, to do that either.
But Governor, just to be clear, you acknowledge that you don't have all of the information yet, and you have yet to put forth any information or evidence that this is politically motivated. You're just making that accusation, frankly, without any real evidence to back it up. And
there's a long and established pattern of the past few years of this sort of thing happening. It happened under the Obama administration. We saw it in the IRS and was very much documented and proven and brought before Congress. We've seen it now since then in the Department of Justice, and we're seeing a DOJ that actually was more comfortable aligning with the group that called Concerned Parents domestic terrorists than actually doing things to protecting seated members of the U.S. Supreme Court when people were violating federal code in front of their house.
But Governor, just staying on the Mar-a-Lago issue, just to be clear, the FBI is directed by Christopher Wray, who was appointed by former President Trump. So it does seem to undercut your argument that there's some broader, deeper, malicious thing happening. No, because the FBI isn't made up entirely of political appointees. It's made up of people who overwhelmingly are career bureaucrats, people that overwhelmingly are part of the swamp that people talked about time and time again. Let me ask you about something you told my colleague Shaquille Brewster, that former President Trump deserves to still have an influence in the GOP after his time in office. Given everything that has been revealed about his actions before, on, and after January 6th, can you still make that argument? Has your mind changed at all?
My point when I said to him then, as I would say to you now, is because of the things that were accomplished during his 4 years as President of the United States, because of the unbelievably positive policies that led us to one of the healthiest economies in the history of our nation, because of the things he did to get the federal government out of our backs and out of our lives. I look at what he did, the judges, the justices that were nominated to the federal bench, and a whole assortment of other things, and say, yeah, he still has a right, just as others do, to speak out and be a part
that all outweighs January 6th, Governor. Governor, that all outweighs January 6th and what we've learned that he did not do during the hours that the attack was ongoing.
I would love to have you come with me to Wisconsin, because I don't hear people talk about January 6th. They talked about it a year and a half ago.
But I'm asking you about January 6th, Governor. But I'm asking you about January 6th.
But the vast majority of people are infinitely more concerned about why their gas prices have gone up under Joe Biden, why their food costs have gone up. They want people to respond to those things. It's people in Washington and the bubble that keep talking about January 6th.
But are you concerned about what happened on January 6th and the former president's role in it?
I am concerned that people in Washington that live in the bubble keep talking about things that everyday citizens have long since a year and a half ago already gone past. It's not that they didn't like, that they agreed with everything that happened that day, but they expected it to be taken care of back then. Dredging this off again, I think most Americans, particularly here in Wisconsin, think is just a huge distraction from the issues that really matter to them. And they're going to vote for people today and in November who actually address those issues.
And yet, Governor, you are backing Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Clayfish, as we've been talking about, who, of course, is running against someone who former President Trump is backing. He's backing businessman Tim Michels. Why did you break with the former president on this, and why do you think she's the better pick?
Well, I've supported her since day one, so I was out front in this because I saw firsthand someone who had never held office before. She and Ron Johnson ran for the very first time in 2010. She won a primary. She took on a Capitol insider and then joined me on the ticket. Not only did we win, but We took on the big, bold, positive conservative reforms that turned our state around, even in the midst of all the protests and riots. She was herself dealing with cancer, and yet she didn't back down. She's ready on day one. She's going to be an excellent governor. And by all the polls show, she's the best positioned to get rid of Tony Evers, who's been an absolute disappointment. He shut down our economy. He shut down our schools. He did little or nothing about violence in our streets, and she's the one that's going to turn it around.
All right. Well, of course, he and his team would probably disagree with you on all of that, and we will have to see what happens in this primary race. Governor Scott Walker, really appreciate your joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kristen. Good to be with you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.